Today we're going to learn about motivations, which will help us better understand the characters we read about in stories. Our goal today is going to be to learn how to identify a character's motivations in a story. To do that, we're going to learn what motivations means. We're also going to learn how to use questions to figure out a character's motivations. Motivations are why a character does something. They're different for every character, and they can help us understand characters better. We can figure out a character's motivations by looking at his or her actions, asking, why did he or she do that? Asking, what did he or she gain or get from doing that? And thinking about what we would do and why. Let's give it a try. We read this story previously when we were learning about sequence of events, so we're pretty familiar with how the events go in this story. As we were identifying the events, we looked for the actions of different characters. Let's start by looking just at the actions of the wolf and thinking about the wolf's motivations. But before we do that, remember, how do we figure out a character's motivations? We want to look at his or her actions. We want to ask, why did he or she do that? And ask, what did he or she gain from doing that? And then think about what we would do and why. So we want to ask these questions and look for the actions of the wolf. That's what we're going to focus on right now. A wolf found great difficulty in getting at the sheep owing to the vigilance of the shepherd and his dogs. There's an action right there. But one day it found the skin of a sheep that had been flayed and thrown aside. So it put it on over its own pelt and strolled down among the sheep. That's another action. The lamb that belonged to the sheep, whose skin the wolf was wearing, began to follow the wolf in the sheep's clothing. So, leading the lamb a little apart, he soon made a meal of her. There's another action, and for some time he succeeded in deceiving the sheep and enjoying hearty meals. Now that we've underlined all of the wolf's actions, let's think about what was motivating him. What were his motivations? It's hard to imagine anybody wanting to eat a lamb. So we might have a little trouble thinking, what would I do in this situation? But why do you think the wolf was doing that? What did he get from eating the lamb? He was probably hungry, and eating the lamb was how he got his food. So that's one motivation. But instead of just going and getting a dinner like you or I would, he had to actually be really tricky about it and try to trick the sheep in order to be able to get his own dinner. So that's another motivation. He was trying to trick the sheep so that he could eat them. So those were the wolf's two motivations. Now I want us to think about what was motivating the lamb. Let's look at the lamb's actions. There's really only one sentence about the lamb, so let's read that. The lamb that belonged to the sheep, whose skin the wolf was wearing, began to follow the wolf in the sheep's clothing. So that's what the lamb was up to. But why would the lamb follow the wolf? That doesn't make any sense. What was the lamb's motivations? Let's look again at that sentence. It says, the lamb that belonged to the sheep. What do you think it means to belong to the sheep? And what's the difference between a lamb and a sheep anyway? If you don't know, a lamb is just a baby sheep. So the lamb is a baby. The sheep, the clothing that the wolf was wearing, belonged to whoever the lamb belonged to. So it was probably the lamb's parents or mom that was wearing the wolf was wearing the clothing of. So the lamb was probably just trying to stay with its mom. That's what motivated it to follow the wolf. Now that we understand what was motivating the characters, we definitely understand the characters and the story a whole lot better. Here are a few questions that when you see them, you might want to think about a character's motivations. The first one is, why did blank happen? And the blank will just be an event or action from the story. You might also see this question. Why did blank, a character from the story, do blank, a specific action from the story? So, for example, in this story, you might see a question like, why did the lamb follow the wolf? And then you would have to think about the lamb's motivations to figure it out. I think you're ready to try this on your own now. Good luck!